The second dimension is where, let's say, duality was created, dark and light. That's where these opposing energies were created. Now, the energy of masculine went with light and the energy of feminine went with dark. Just basically made women to be bad because it was the dark and it was what they couldn't understand, and the masculine to be good because that was the light, because it's what you can see, it's what you can understand, it's what you can grasp. And so there's such a fear of the shadows even. And that's a big reason why the feminine was put down so much. This is why in the Middle East are the most suppressed, from how they're able to dress and how they're able to show up and how much autonomy they're allowed to have. And the reason being is when we look at the Middle East, those are where very divine goddesses like Mary Magdalene and Isis and Lilith are from.
Sima Shamash, welcome on Just Tap In. What are you most excited about right now in your life?
Transformation, I'll say. I think it's such a transformative time. So I am so excited to just continue to transform.
And yeah, we were talking before recording, that you are literally in the middle of where all of the fires have been going on. And when I hear the word transformation, I think a lot about the phoenix. And the phoenix comes from, the ashes and transforms. So how have you found the situation regarding the fires support you in this transformation?
I will say that while the fires were happening, especially very near to our home, it quite literally ignited something within me. It unleashed a certain aspect of my inner self to kind of be bold and brave and free in how I want to speak, how I want to show up, and more importantly, who I want to be. And it literally ignited that in me. And it literally felt like something was lit within me. And I was like, there's no turning back and I don't want to. And so it was such a beautiful reflection of what got to happen in my inner world.
And I've heard you talk about how right now we're at this juncture point where people are being called to a new timeline. And it's almost like when we're being called into that new life, there's also that energy of maybe feeling a little stuck, not knowing how to take the present self to the future self that we're creating. What is this juncture point and the timelines that you're perceiving right now?
I think it's a little different for everyone because we have free will to choose the timeline that we want to go to. We're all being supported and almost pushed into a higher timeline. And by higher, it just means something better, something that's elevated and more in alignment to the you are evolving into. And we all have free will to choose what that timeline is. And so a lot of people are really seeing ooh, this is where I want to go. This is what I want to step into. This is what I want to create. And this is who I want to be. And I think people get stuck then seeing where they're at to how to get there. And there's this illusion of being stuck, but you're not really. It's like the journey is now getting started. And so we get to remember that it's a journey, and the journey builds us up into being the person who gets to receive that timeline and then maintain that timeline as well.
And even though there is that free will, you've said also that our timeline is shifting rapidly toward destiny timelines. So I'm curious to know what the connection there is in the free will aspect versus our timeline that has our destiny in it. What is that connection there?
I love this question because a lot of people ask this question: if there is free will, then what is destiny? If something is predestined for us, then is free will actually real? So the way I like to explain this is that destiny is what we always feel called to. It's the thing that lights us up inside the most. So let's just say, for example, someone who is destined to have children. The idea of being a parent and having children will always light them up. That is a part of their destiny codes. Now, with your free will and in your human experience, You can say, let's just say, for example, a woman is approaching 40 years. And so she's always had this desire to be a mother and have children. And it is a part of her destiny. However, in her free will, because life is generating experiences, she will then say, oh, you know what? Maybe it's not meant for me. And so I'm not going to have children anymore because I'm 40 and it's just not possible. Free will can have us go against our destiny because we have free will. And I think it's important for us to see in the world, there's so many people we could just see by how they're living their lives that they haven't gone after their destiny. They've let limiting beliefs and what they call reality to be realistic to kick in for them, and therefore they don't go for what their destiny is. And so we have free will to choose to walk away from our destiny, or we have free will to choose to lean into it.
And there are 8 billion people on this planet. So you get to mix in 8 billion different free wills. And even though we are all individuated consciousness, we're also a collective consciousness. So do you feel that right now, currently where we're at in humanity, is there a destiny for us right now?
Like as a whole for our world?
As a collective for humanity and maybe even the earth?
I think the collective for humanity is the destiny for Earth. And I think this is a really interesting question because the destiny of Earth is to be determined by its inhabitants' free will. And what we've seen happen in the history of Earth is the beings that inhabited it were destructed and it started all over, destructed and it started all over. And so in this time, it's kind of Earth's destiny is to continue. Humanity's destiny is in the hands of their own free will.
That's interesting. That's interesting. You said also that this year in particular is the year of receiving. So Spirit told you that you're here also to help people create this highest timeline for themselves. In what way are people not allowing themselves to receive their highest timeline?
No, it's actually quite simple. People think it's such a complicated formula, but it's quite simple. It's literally your belief system. That's it. It all comes down to what you believe. So if we have this belief of, I'm not good enough, you're not going to receive whatever is in your highest timeline because you're thinking, I'm not good enough. If you believe that life is meant to be difficult, you're not going to allow yourself to receive that highest timeline where things flow to you easily and effortlessly and being in alignment to yourself. And it's just that simple. It comes down to our belief system. And I think sometimes people view this like spiritual living as it's something so, for lack of better words, woo-woo, but it's not. When we take a look at it, it's literally just how we are living our lives and what we're allowing to infiltrate our thoughts and therefore our belief system and what we're not going to allow in. And that's all that it comes down to. It's about believing that the things you are drawn to the most, the things that ignite you the most are also meant for you and you get to have them. It's actually that simple.
It is that simple. And but the hard part is putting it into practice and relieving ourselves from those belief systems. A lot of the belief systems around spirituality is, I'm not gifted enough, or I'm watching all these podcasts of people that are connected spiritually and are channeling and are connected to their guides, but I don't have that. And there's a point in your life you were living in New York and you had to move back to LA because you were really sick. And I remember reading that it said you were going through these massive energetic updates so that you could hold the new gifts that were coming through. What was that process like of, understanding that you were going through this massive upgrade and that you were ready to hold those gifts that you were being called to work with?
Well, I will say that at the time, I didn't know that's what was happening. And at that time when I was going through this, I the spiritual world wasn't as big and popular as it is now. And so I really didn't logically know what was going on. I was just navigating it intuitively and being like, this is all happening for a reason and I just don't understand it. But it was really just a time of tuning inwards and having faith, because when nothing makes sense, the only thing that you could cling on to is your faith. And I will say it was one of the scariest times of my life, because it just feels like life was being taken away from you. And what it taught me is life is literally like a roller coaster. And I think when we're brought into life, we just think life is going to be an easy ride. And as long as you do the right things and you follow the rules, life is going to be easy. And then you realize that's not how it's meant to go. It's not how it's meant to go. It's meant to be up and down. It's meant to be a roller coaster. And there's going to be times where it feels like a drop. And sometimes those drops feel prolonged, but those are all of the times where you are evolving and remembering and creating a closer connection to God. And, just like a roller coaster, by the time that ride is done, you come off and you're like, whoa, you are not the same person you were when you first got on that ride. And life is meant to be series of roller coasters, and they get to be fun. So the ups and the downs and the sideways and the flips backward, it gets to be fun. And I think the biggest thing I realized is if I had just really surrendered when I was going through that, this would have been so much easier. I just didn't know that I was meant to surrender. And that's where I learned all of these things. And looking back, I'm like, oh, that's what was happening to my body. Like I was just going through many series of upgrades within my vessel to be able to hold the magnitude of the gifts and the information that wants to be channeled through me. And that's why when some people say, oh, I'm not as spiritual as you, Sima, and I'm like, no, that's not true. I was just destined to work with these gifts. And through my free will, I actually said yes to it. I want to embody these gifts. So the upgrade started. Not everyone is meant to be in this life and channel information, but that doesn't make you any more or less spiritual. Spirituality is just how we're choosing to live. It's a non-religious guidebook to life. It's all that it is. And so it doesn't mean you have to channel or have this deep connection to your guides or your counsel, because you already have it. And if you're not channeling, that's absolutely fine. You're not meant to. It's not for everyone. And I always tell people, I'm like, don't go chasing it thinking that's going to make you be more spiritual. There is no such thing. It's almost like somebody who doesn't have a voice to sing, forcing themselves to be a singer. Well, that's not your natural gift. It's something else. Spirituality is just, it teaches us a way of life that's connected to the truth, that's connected to us.
Flow, not force. And
yes.
when you talk about the spirit council, and I've heard you say that we all have one, made up consisting of our, guides, angels, archangels, ascended masters, you name it, galactics. What was it like for you to first begin to start connecting with that counsel that you have in this life?
It actually happened in sessions with clients where I realized I wasn't connecting to loved ones that had passed on. The information that was coming through for the client was just so different. And I was like, where's this coming from? I knew that it was of a good source, but after the session, I remember sitting, I was like, who gave me this information? Because who I was working with used to be loved ones that had passed on. But I was like, this was not their loved one. Where did this come from? And all of a sudden I saw this image of, just think of, the best way I can put it is, have you ever seen in, what was that werewolf and thing movie? Twilight? Yes.
Yeah.
How when they have to go to that council and they're like being met with the council and people are sitting at a table, that's how spirit showed it to me, because it's like, this is a higher council that's watching over, except everything was white and everything was beautiful. And that's how I saw it. It's almost like I saw a bunch of energies sitting side by side at this long white table, and they said, we are a council. And I was like, a council of what? And they're like, we are their spirit council. And I asked, I was like, so what is the spirit council? And I'm also saying this for people to know that you can ask the things that you are channeling, ask questions. And so I asked, I said, what, counsel to what? What do you do? And they said, we're high-level angels assigned to that specific person that was here. And I was like, so then how do you work? And they said, we work with their soul contract. And that's when I first connected to spirit counsel. And I was like, this is really cool. And I noticed the information that I was receiving for each person is literally so specific to them and so specific to their contract. And that's where they told me this is just like, it's a higher level than just your guides or loved ones that passed on. They're very high level angels just assigned to you, and they work with you. So then the sessions become very specific to you and your contract for this lifetime.
I would love to go even deeper into those contracts, because in your sessions and also in your experience, what have you found consists, or what do these soul contracts normally consist of? Is it the people we're going to meet? Is it like a necessarily like job that we're going to take on in this life? Like what sort of things can also people begin to have an understanding of, oh, this was in my soul contract and this other thing was free will. Like that was in my soul contract. I created this here.
I think the number one thing I've noticed that's in people's soul contracts is actually experiences. And I think who we experience that with is our free will, but the experiences we're meant to have, it's actually part of our contract. Like I've seen people go through divorces and they want to be down on themselves and judging themselves. I made the wrong decision. And I'm like, no, this was actually a part of your soul contract. You were meant to experience divorce in this lifetime. And so I've noticed experiences are in our soul contracts. It's just who we play it out with becomes a part of our free will.
I love that. Experiences, not, yeah. Because I've noticed that sometimes when I'm vibrating at a specific frequency, I'll attract different people. So I could still be having the same experience, but depending on where I'm vibrating at. So then that leads me, is there such thing as a soulmate? Is there such thing as a twin flame? Is there such thing as, these people that are meant for us? I do
think there are people that are, well, not people, souls that are meant to cross paths with us in this lifetime, whether it be as like a karmic lesson or be a soulmate. I do think we have many soulmates, and it just depends how we choose to live our lives to see which mate feels the best for our soul. And some soulmates are just meant to come in to awaken us to something and then be gone. So this idea that there's this one soulmate, it's like there is not one. There's multiple possibilities because we have free will. We're constantly choosing a different reality for ourselves. But I think it's reassuring to realize that if we're thinking of like soulmate as the one, there's multiple different ones based on who we want to pick. I will say though, however, twin flames, I do believe twin flames do exist. Twin flame and a soulmate are two different things. And a twin flame is literally your soul is split into two separate bodies. And a soulmate is literally just another soul that is a mate of your soul. And a twin flame is not something that everybody has in a lifetime. And so sometimes people are looking for their twin flame, and I'm like, you may or may not even have it in this lifetime. And one thing that I've learned along this journey is that you can have a twin flame that's actually not in this dimension. And so this chasing after it or saying, I'm looking for my twin flame, I'm like, don't do those things. Like, do twin flames exist? Yes. Do you have one? You may or may not. Like, let's not hold on so deeply to that, and let's focus on becoming that love for ourselves first. And if it's love and partnership that you desire, you'll attract that into your life.
Hello, beautiful family. Quick one today. I just wanted to take a moment to thank each and every one of you that have subscribed to this channel. Your subscription means more than you know. Even though it's free, what you're doing is you're empowering a whole channel to be able to do this every single day and continue showing up in the way that we can with all of our resources on hand. Thank you for contributing to the growth of this channel, for sharing it with the people that you love, for creating a conscious movement of individuals that are seeking the sovereignty and the divinity of their soul. this is why we're here. And if you haven't already and you're enjoying this content, I invite you now to look below on that little button that says subscribe and welcome you properly to this community. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being who you are and being pure love and radiating that with everyone that you see. Back to the episode. And when you first started connecting with the councils of people, you said that you had to determine, this was coming from a good source. What is your process in discerning whether something is coming from a good source, per se?
There's different layers of it, I will say. And I think in the years of doing this work, I've realized where the energy is coming from and how it feels in my body the most. So for me, the number one thing, I am such an empath. It's actually even in my human design that I operate through my emotions. And so I personally can just feel, is this truth or is this not truth? Does this feel white or does this feel dark to me? And I also set with spirit this clear initiation, show me white or show me black, literally make it black or white so I can tell. And so that's another way. That's how when I first met the council, it was all white. And that was my signal of like, no, this is from the highest source. And I always ask, are you from the highest source of God? And they have to say yes or no. They have to answer. I often tell people spirit or these energies, it's kind of like a narc. When you meet them and you ask them, are you a cop? They have to tell you yes if they are. It's the same thing with spirit. If spirit is not of the highest source, and let's just say their energy is coming through manipulating you to think that it is, you can always ask them if you are confused, are you of the highest source of God? And they have to say no if they're not. And if it's a no, you say, well, I command you to leave the space. You're not welcome.
Is the reason there because they can't like lie or manipulate if you ask them, or what's the reasoning behind that?
It's the way that I feel it is when you speak that to them, the vibration of the words lifts the veil. And so it's almost like when you're speaking that, it lifts the veil, because think of it as like you're being tricked, but then you're like, this doesn't work with me. So then they have to take the mask off. And everything is energy. So if we're asking this of like, are you of the light? They have to answer it, because you're like, mask off, let's be real. Everything falls and then you see the truth.
One of the other gifts that you have is that of mediumship and connecting with the souls on the other side. I'm curious, Sarah, and I wanted to ask you regarding the souls that are now on the other side, but are preparing to incarnate on Earth in the coming years. What have you felt into that energy of the souls that are preparing to come in now? Has it differed from the past? I've heard many different things, but I would love to hear from you.
I will say I don't work as much anymore with loved ones that have passed on in sessions. So I don't work with that energy as much, because I kind of transferred to just working with people's spirit councils. But when it comes to souls and the souls that are coming into Earth, even those that were here and are getting ready to reincarnate, when souls reincarnate, it's not that, let's just say, for example, my dad has passed away. If my dad is ready to reincarnate and come back, let's just say as my child, it doesn't mean that his soul will no longer be there to connect to and get messages to. When a soul reincarnates, it's an aspect of their soul, because we're multidimensional. There's an aspect of their soul that's ready to come down to Earth. So that dad of mine will still be there if a medium wants to connect to him and receive messages from his soul. But I've noticed that a lot of souls are doing a lot of work on the other side, so that when they come back, it's to contribute to this higher vibration that Earth is going into. And we can actually see it when we look at the little kids of now. They're so wise. There's so much depth. There's just so much remembrance that already comes through with them. And a lot of them come into families and homes where the parents have gone through their awakening. So parents don't shut off the child's wisdom, they actually encourage it. And so as the years continue to go on, I see this common theme of the souls that are coming in here are truly such high vibrational souls that are first and foremost here to raise the frequency of our earth just by simply being here. And as they grow up, they're raised in a place where their consciousness is not being turned off. It just being encouraged to continue to grow. And this is why we're able to receive these more evolved souls into earth now.
One of the first messages that you ever shared online from the downloads that you received was in 2018 around women and their infertility issues. And I think that ties in very nicely with, this concept of these evolved souls that are coming in. They have to come into a household and parents that are ready to receive such an evolved child. So where does that lie in terms of the infertility and some issues that maybe women have faced in that realm?
I feel like this is such a touchy subject because people get so they take it so personally. So I always like to tell people this is not a one size fits all situation. If it resonates with you, or even if it pisses you off, it's telling you something. So sit with the message. But our life, our experience here is not one size fits all. But one thing Spirit did tell me, and the message came through many, many years ago, is that if a woman, or even in the partnership, so it's not to say just to blame the woman, but if you are not in the right partnership, and if that home is not a healthy home, and you are destined to receive a high vibrational soul, that soul's not going to come in. They're going to be like, no, we're not coming, because even the woman's vessel won't be able to carry that child. It won't be able to carry that energy and that frequency. And many times what's happening there, if a woman is dealing with infertility, it's that soul is already taking her through her awakening journey so she can wake up in the ways that she is meant to. And if it's coming from the man's side, that infertility is coming from that space, it's the same thing for him on his end to go and do the inner work. And then sometimes two people are just, the contract is not there for them to have a child together. So free will may have allowed two people to get married, but the contract is not there to have a child together. And I know a lot of people say, well, I've seen two people that are terrible for each other and they have children, so this doesn't make sense. And I'm like, every contract is different. Sometimes certain souls choose to come into those families because they need to live out certain experiences for their own soul, that household will support their soul in having that experience, or they're just a soul family. These souls travel together. And so you're just continuing to live out these cycles with each other. And that's why this soul was able to come into this family. So there's so many different reasons, and there's just so many different layers to this. But I always felt called to talking about those women that can't get pregnant and they're wondering why. A really big element to it is you're being called to have an awakening. You're really being called to go within so that your vessel can receive this energy that wants to and is meant to use your body as the portal to come into this world too.
And when we talk about women, we also have to talk about the feminine energy. And we've seen in recent years, in history, past history, thankfully this is changing, but the feminine energy has been under attack in many ways. I don't even want to go into the details, but I've heard you say that it all started in the second dimension. The reason why this feminine energy has been suppressed. What is the deeper, reason why that has occurred in the past and how it's changing now?
So the second dimension, when we look at the dimensions that make up our reality, the second dimension is where, let's say, duality was created, dark and light. That's where these opposing energies were created. It's in the second dimension. Now, the energy of masculine went with light and the energy of feminine went with dark. This is why in our world, we see women are naturally more intuitive. Women are naturally more emotional. Women are better with working with things that are not the seen, and men are very visual, straight, direct in what's there. And so when the first humans started to come on Earth and there's this remembrance of these dimensions, they automatically associated light with good, dark with bad. So the masculine became good and the feminine became bad. And since women carry more of the feminine energy, because feminine doesn't mean woman, it's just in this dimension, feminine embodies in a female body and masculine embodies in a man's body more so. And so they just basically made women to be bad because it was the dark and it was what they couldn't understand. And the masculine to be good because that was the light, because it's what you can see, it's what you can understand, it's what you can grasp. And when we look at our world, there's such a fear of the unknown. Even when we look at spirituality, there's such a fear of, no, don't connect to spirits, it could be bad. And so there's such a fear of the shadows even. And that's a big reason why the feminine was put down so much. In my work, though, something that Spirit has always told me is when we look at this energy of, let's say, dark as in bad energy on this earth, the energy that wants to control the earth, it also has recognized that in the female body, the codes and the remembrance that she holds in the sacred feminine are codes that will literally break apart this bad dark energy that's on the planet. So how is it going to work through the minds of others to keep it small? Well, let's suppress women. This is why, and this is a download Spirit gave me. They're like, this is why in the Middle East, it's the number one place in the world you see where women are the most suppressed, from how they're able to dress and how they're able to show up and how much autonomy they're allowed to have. And the reason being is when we look at the Middle East, those are where very divine goddesses like Mary Magdalene and Isis and Lilith are from. And so those codes of these really powerful goddesses also exist in that part of the earth, and they're just using it to suppress it, because so long as the carriers of that wisdom are asleep, it won't turn on and it won't support the fall of this darkness in our world.
And I know you have Persian roots, so it's even more personal to you.
It's very personal to me.
In what ways then have you seen that the feminine energy has been misunderstood throughout the years?
I think people start to view the feminine energy as it's only supposed to be soft and sweet and nurturing and kind and happy and bubbly. And I think even women for the longest time were told that that is what it means to be a woman. And we start to forget that there's so much strength in the feminine. And this is why so many women have stepped into their masculine, because women are looking for power and strength within themselves. And we forgot that women carry that within themselves. And so we turned straight into our masculine to find our power. And I think that is one of the biggest ways that women have disconnected from themselves, because they have forgotten that there is so much strength and power within being a woman. And there's so many codes within our vessels that are literally powerful. And it's okay as a woman to be grounded, to be assertive, to have boundaries. And, even when we look at the world, when a woman shows up like that, what do they call her? Oh, she's such a bitch. But why? And, and I think people are waking up to this and realizing that in being a woman, it's not just the sweet, nice sides. Of course, we naturally are nurturers and it feels so good to us to be that. But our power also comes from being in our feminine. It comes from being assertive. And when we start to learn about the goddesses, we realize the goddess of destruction is a goddess. It's a feminine energy. The goddess of rebellion is a goddess. It's a feminine energy. The goddess of sensuality and sexuality is a goddess. It's a feminine energy. And, these are all the things that were taken away from women so that we don't remember. But in this grand awakening that's happening, women are remembering. And I think it's one of the most beautiful things to see. And for me, being Middle Eastern and actually being born in Iran, that's where I was born. And I think that's why it is so personal, because the land that you are born on, it literally, you feel what's going on there, even if you're not there. And, I so deeply feel the suppression that's happening to women there. And so it's it's even more of a calling for me to shout it from the rooftops, to support women in awakening, to embodying their truth and being empowered in this way, because as we awaken on the other sides of the earth, the energy transfers. We're all connected. And so that's why I'm so passionate about speaking about this and encouraging women to step into their awakenings, because it helps women around the world awaken.
And I've also heard you say that it's through our feeling that we remember. So in what ways has tapped into your feeling helped you remember a lot of this information and bring it to light like you're doing right now?
I think especially as a woman, since we are naturally more emotional, our feelings can be what becomes our biggest weakness, or it could become our biggest strength. When we sit with our feelings, when we sit with our emotions and view them as messengers that we can look at, that we can understand, that we can go deep into its literal messages, we can always translate these things into what's to come and what's to happen and what's going on. Spirit really speaks to us through our emotions. And that's the number one thing they've used against women, is to be like, oh, women are crazy. Oh, you're hormonal. Oh, this. And so women started to make their own emotions bad, but it is not a bad thing. It is actually our superpower. And it's actually what we are here to bring forward, to hold for humanity, for the masculine, and what we get to mirror in the masculine of how he can step into his emotions as well. But when we see these divine unions of masculine and feminine, and we see masculine as being the strength and outwards, like the hunter-gatherer, it's the wisdom of the feminine that helps guide that masculine. And the wisdom, that knowing, it comes through emotions. So ever since I learned to not run away from my emotions, but to lean into them, my life started to change, because I started to realize, what emotions am I carrying? What are they telling me? What am I feeling? If I'm feeling frustrated or sad in here, what is it activating within me? If I'm feeling joyful, what is it reflecting to me? And when we start to realize our emotions are literally a superpower, the game changes for women, because they don't get tugged at anymore, because so many things try to manipulate us by just tugging at our heartstrings and tugging at our emotions. But when you learn to master your emotions and be in tune with them, you don't get manipulated.
And in regards to manipulation, you've said, especially for the intuitive people, the intuitive women, also men as well, it's very easy for us to see a person's soul and for who they truly are and their essence and really feel into it.
Mm-hmm.
So you talk about this cycle of falling for potential and not actuality. Tell us a little bit more about that.
I think intuitive people, this could be men and women both, but just, again, naturally women tend to be more intuitive, but it doesn't mean that it's not true for men. We can see a person's soul. So we can see, oh my God, here's what they're capable of. And so we tend to go for potential. When we don't realize these things, we tend to go for potential because we're like, well, he or she can step into this. That's what they're here to be. And then what you start to realize is that people in their free will may never reach their potential. And it was something that I had to personally experience to understand. And this is why I say in our contract, it's experiences. And it was an experience that I had, and an experience that I was meant to have, to really understand the depths of these things, and to understand that while we can see a person's soul and what they're capable of, and the magic and the beauty and the greatness of them, free will plays a big role. And some people may never, ever in a lifetime step into that. Even if it is a part of their contract, they still might not. And so it was a very big lesson not to fall for potential, versus choose people in your life, whether it's romantic partnerships or friendships or whatever it is, that have already stepped into that potential and are just continuing to grow and evolve from that space.
From a soul contract perspective, how do you view potential in that way?
What do you mean?
So when we create our soul contract, how do we know and determine if where we are now is, our peak potential, we're riding the wave, or, there's still a little bit more to get to where we are?
Feel into it. I mean, we're always here to evolve. So even when we're at this space, it's like, okay, we're good here. And then in X amount of time, we're going to be called to grow because we're here to evolve. But we can always feel into, do I feel good with where I'm at? Or do I feel like I can be more? And I think when we just simply feel into it, we know. And there are seasons in our lives where we are growing to become more and evolve. And then there's seasons of our lives where we're like, we're going to stay at this place right now and really embody this growth that I've had. And this is why I encourage feelings so much, and healthy feelings, and literally becoming emotionally intelligent and mentally resilient to understand your emotions, because it signals everything to you. Our souls are designed with like an emotional guidance system within us, where everything we know is within us and we know it through our feelings.
Part of your counsel, and that of many others that are listening, also includes galactics and aliens and that energy as well, that you also started connecting with within your counsel and the people that you worked with. So how have you approached this energy of the galactics? And how do you begin to explain to someone why we are, part also alien? I heard you use the term hybrid once, and a lot of people may feel that in for themselves. But yeah, I'd love to just open the can of worms in that realm as well.
I will say our galactic councils and our angelic councils are actually two different councils. I haven't yet experienced them being in one council. They can both show up in a session, but they're different councils. And galactic councils have actually taught me a lot as I've worked with them, because I see galactic councils as this higher evolved energy than angelic councils. And what's interesting is when galactic councils come in and they work with me and a client, it's always about joy and love and silliness and playfulness. And, you think of these higher evolved souls as being strict and stern and serious, and these galactic councils are anything but that. It's playful, it's joyful, and it's just such a reminder of the energy we come from and what we're meant to embody and the purity that we really come from. So there's just such a beauty and a light energy from galactic councils, which makes me understand why they made aliens be so scary and so bad in our Earth, so that we don't connect to it, so that we think of aliens and we think scary and we disconnect from it, and then we don't receive the beautiful messages and the wisdom they have for us. But much like energy on Earth, where there could be lower vibrational energy, that also does exist in the galactics. There are the not so good, let's call them aliens. But that's just energy that also exists. And so as always, we always protect our vessels. We always say only the beings of the highest source of God and the highest source of good throughout the universe are allowed. And that's how I protect my vessel, so that we're not messing with any of the other ones.
And how are the aliens protecting humanity right now?
Think of our whole solar system and think of where Earth is, and think of an energetic protective shield around Earth, where bad things can't come in and hit it and destroy it. And so there is this huge protective energy around Earth. And so now they're just kind of watching, okay, what are the humans going to do in their free will? How are they going to raise this vibration? How is this collective consciousness that's rising together? How is that going to happen? But Earth is being protected. And so there is, am I trying to make it as simple as possible? It's think of it a battle of like light and dark. And at a certain point, dark really took over Earth, and light has been doing its thing to help restore it. And when we look at the solar system in that energy, the light has really won in that space. So it has created this really beautiful protective shield around Earth. This is why I always say we are so protected and so guided beyond what we even know is real. And we just get to tune into that and trust that there is this protective layer around us. Like, I remember one time as I was watching the sky, I don't know if they do it in Colombia where you're at, but in LA, there's these chemtrails in the sky everywhere. And I noticed it was this time where it's also, when you look at media and stuff, everyone's talking about it. It's everywhere and they're allowing it. So I asked the Galactics, I'm like, well, this is generating fear. So fear is not the truth. Fear only comes when we don't understand something. And I looked at the Galactics. I was like, tell me the truth of this. And they're like, you see, what people don't know is that we protect the outermost part of the Earth. So whatever is being sent in that, we can neutralize that energy. So the main harm of these chemtrails is the fear that people are holding with it, is the belief that it's harming them. Meanwhile, we're neutralizing this. There's no harm to you. And I was like, wow, they really are protecting us in ways beyond our knowledge. But what the bad dark does is just it elicits more fear. So I really learned anytime there's fear of something in this earth, I'm like, turn to the Galactics. They're going to give you a bit of wisdom that you didn't know existed. Like when these fires broke out in LA, there were so many fears that I had. I'm like, the air quality sucks. And everyone keeps talking about nanoparticles in the air that you can't see down the line causes cancer because you're breathing it in. And it becomes a little scary. And I was like, I can't sit with this fear. Give me something else. And they reminded me, we have portals, filtration portals around our aura. Tune into those filtration portals and let the aura around you constantly be cleansed. It's almost like we have a air purifier around us at all times, like an energetic air purifier. And they're like, you just need to tune into that and turn it on, and the air around you is fresh and clean. And I was like, whoa, like we wouldn't know that, but the Galactics know that. And so there's so much beautiful wisdom that we get to call in and bring in from them.
During the Second World War, the man who had the nuclear codes, he actually spoke up and said that when they were testing a lot of the launchings that they were going to test around would get deactivated, and they had no idea what was happening. They were like this guy that had the nuclear codes, he's saying this, and that just goes to show, like, they will not allow a huge war that will potentially blow up the planet to occur. So there's a lot of talk right now, like, is there going to be a third world war? And I've seen it, all over TikTok. I'm like, what's going on? Why are people trying to manifest this, like create it in their reality? What have you received around even that potential of, now we have all this advanced technology and weaponry that could, we could potentially destroy ourselves?
There are so many ways in which humanity is trying to destroy itself, and it goes far beyond war. I think people look at war and it's like we're destroying ourselves through war, and what we're not realizing is the war we hold within ourselves is what creates war outside of us. And if we are so afraid of having a war, then just look within yourself, heal the war within yourself. If people didn't have wars within themselves, there would be no wars in this world. It's really that simple. And people are looking at the world of like, oh my God, there's going to be a third world war. And yeah, if you fear it and you continue to separate yourself from other people and separate lands and stuff from each other and this side versus that side, you're contributing to war. And so I've really learned that in this timeline, it's a timeline of deep faith versus fear. And fear will only manipulate us in creating the outcomes that we don't want, where faith will awaken us to the truth of who we are, which is really this Christ consciousness that is evolving around the world, and everybody is picking up on it. It's this Christ consciousness that gets to come through us so that we can create what we have seen written in so many biblical texts of a new heaven and a new earth. And so when people talk about war, I'm like, do you want to fear war or do you want to understand the vibration of war? Because when you understand the vibration of war, you understand yourself. And when you heal the war within yourself, no war can exist outside of you because you're not feeding it.
let's hone that in for people of what is the vibration of war?
Separation. That's all that it is. It's separation. Because when you look at, let's say, different wars that we see in our world today, and I'll emphasize two of the big ones that we've been hearing about a lot, between, let's say, Ukraine and Russia, and between Israel and Palestine. You see, when we label things Ukraine and Russia, you're automatically thinking two separate groups of people, the Ukrainians and the Russians. The one that is the most popular right now, Israel and Palestine, it's two separate people, Israelis and Palestinians. And so when we see separation, that is what fuels war, because it's all about what makes us separate from one another. No, this is mine. No, this is mine. It's at the root of war. There's so much in it, but at the root of it is separation. Because if we didn't connect to separation and we saw unity, we would not stand for 1 second to see any person get killed. But because there is this sense of separation, because of these labels of you're Ukrainian, you're Russian, you're Palestinian, you're Israeli, there is this thing where people become desensitized. Well, they died. Oh, well. And then when someone on their AKA own side dies, oh my God, this is such a grievance. I'm like, do you see the separation where you're grieving only for one side? And when you pick sides and you create separation, bam, there's your war. And so I've been telling people that it's not about, because some people say, well, we end wars by not paying attention to them. I'm like, no, you have to pay attention. You cannot overcome your shadows by ignoring your shadows. You have to look at this collective shadow. But when you look at it, don't run from it. Look at it and choose unity. Look at how separated this has been. It's blown my mind that what we see around the world ever since the start of this war with Israel and Palestine is people either chanting for Israel or chanting for Palestine. I'm like, do you guys know what would happen if as a collective, people chanted together for liberation and justice and freedom for all instead of picking sides? Because everybody picking all of these sides is literally creating more war. You're creating more deaths. The same things that you're complaining about is what your energy is contributing to create.
What was your experience of understanding that on the other side, there is no religion, there is no politics, there is no gender, there is none of these things that separate us?
I think realizing that and knowing that and just seeing that throughout the years of my work, piece by piece by piece, you just start to realize none of the stuff that we experience here is real. It kind of makes me laugh that I'm like, oh my God, people are so attached to these labels, to these identities. And I'm like, none of it is real. And that's where I think labeling stuff creates the most division, is labeling. And when we even look at in America, for example, one of the biggest controversies here is LGBTQ plus community. And I'm like, the more you create more labels on yourselves, the more division, the more separation, and the more chaos is created. What if we're all human, just simply having different human experiences? That's all that it is. It's different human experiences. And where people are so offended by someone who embodies this energy of non-binary, I'm like, you do understand souls are neither man or woman. And so as long as that person is in tune with a frequency of masculine or feminine and is really in alignment to their own balance of it, that's all that matters. Who cares what they want to call themselves? And again, separation. Separation is, dare I say, separation is the root of all evil. That's it. It's everybody just separating.
And it's also the experience of the third dimension, which is the paradox. Like, it's what we're here to learn, but it's also the most challenging thing to overcome.
Yeah.
To get past this darkness. And I wanted to ask you, at what moment did you realize, and this is a quote from you, that as hard as the darkness works, the light is always brighter? At what moment did you realize that?
I remember when I was, I think like 19 or 20. And it really felt like a time in my life where I was going through one of like the darkest night of the soul. And I remember feeling so like everything felt so dark, but there was this like beam of light within me, this beam of remembrance, this beam of like what life gets to be. And that tiny ounce of light within me that I could see was what got me through the whole thing. And that's when I realized, I'm like, if you're in a room that is absolutely pitch black and you just turn on a lighter, that little lighter will navigate you through the entire pitch black room. And so the darkness actually has no power over you. And so our light is really that strong. We just tend to forget it.
And part of the light is the sun. And another message that you received is that do everything with sunshine in your head. I don't know if you remember channeling this, but what did that mean at that point, or what does that mean to you now, and how you do it?
That was a message that that's one of the most special messages to me, where someone's grandma gave us that message, because this is one that I'll never forget. I was channeling for someone and her grandmother came through, and her grandmother lived well into her 80s, smoked every single day of her life, didn't eat very well, but like lived fabulously until she passed away in her 80s. And so we asked her the question in that session, what wisdom do you have for us? Because, you lived in a way that we're told if you do that, like you're going to be sick and die early. And here you were living a fabulous life. Like, what was your secret? And she said, do everything with sunshine in your head, which means do everything in your life and the decisions that you're making with joy and let it feel like sunshine. And as I have continued to grow since then and since receiving that message, it is such a reminder that it's not the things we are doing, it's what we are labeling it as. Is this bad or is this good? Do everything with sunshine. Make everything in life a good experience. View the silver lining in everything. And when we view it in that way, life becomes like sunshine, and our bodies, our physical bodies, find health in that. And so it is really one of my favorite things to say, is do everything with sunshine in your head.
It's beautiful. When I first heard it, I'm like, life would be very different, and there are days where there's clouds, and there's days where there's rain and thunder, and
it's about viewing the thunder and the rain through the lens of sunshine. Like, okay, well, this is okay. I'm just having this experience today. It's fine. And it's not to say don't have the experience of thunder and rain and sadness and chaos. It does happen. It's just, what meaning are we giving it? And we can give it a very sunshine meaning.
Yeah. Sima, I was wondering if you would be open to connecting with my own soul council to give a message to our community, and, just tuning into that energy to see what comes through from that side. And, obviously I've been, in a way, leading this community, in a way, bringing the right people and curating it as best as I can. And I feel like maybe there's a chance that they might want to bring in through a message for all of us here listening.
Well,
if you'd be open to that.
Let's ask if they have anything. Less for the collective, but more for you, which will then translate to the collective. I will tell you, one of the things that you're being called to step into very heavily, for lack of better words, is in this grounded, divine, masculine presence, which I think you tend to not run away from, but shy away into leaning into it. And you're being called very deeply to step into that, step into this evolved version of your own masculine that feels very right for you, instead of trying to show up in a way that maybe will please so many other people, versus what feels very in alignment to you instead. And what Spirit is saying, why they choose this message for you that then contributes or supports the collective that listens to this, is because I think you also have a lot of men who tune into here, and a lot of men who are resistant, even though they want to truly step into their masculine. And in this timeline that we're all in, we are being so deeply called to step into those versions of ourselves. And so jump into it. I don't want to say fearlessly, but faithfully. And allow yourself to go through this next level of evolution for yourself to become the man of your own dreams.
Beautiful. I'd love to unwrap that of what does it mean for someone to step into their masculine?
I think for me, as such a girly girl and woman, I think that is such a question for the masculine, because I can't pretend that I know what it's like to be a man. I can only tune into the certain aspects of masculine for myself that I embody. But I think specifically for you, that masculine energy for you that you're being called to step into is to literally be like a trailblazer. Like, go after the things that you want, go hunt the things that you want, and go create and go outwards and create and do more. I think there's so much more that you want to create that you shy away from. And that is your masculine, because the masculine is the hunter-gatherer. It's the one that creates on the outside of things. And they're telling you to go literally run into it and go create and step into that power.
Yeah, I feel it. I feel this year started off like my creativity has never been, to this degree that I felt it. And there's so many, of course, projects and initiatives that I want to do. Of course, now we've grown this community, beautiful souls, and I want to do more. So I needed that message, and thank you for the reminder.
Yeah. And you're so supported in doing that.
Appreciate it. Sima, we end every show with a segment called the Final Trio, which are just questions that we ask at the end. Before that, where would you send people to connect with you, work with you, bring people into your universe? Where would you send them to do that?
My Instagram is the number one place, because I'm always on Instagram. I'm always on my stories. I'm always posting content. So follow my Instagram. It's just at Sima Shamash, which is my name. As far as working with me, there is a wait list to work with me one-on-one. So just always keep an eye out on the stories as I take on new one-on-one clients. But one of my biggest goals this year is to create more courses and more things that I could put out to support the collective in many ways. So just follow me on Instagram, and everything that's to come, it's all there. You see all the information there, but that's the best place to find me.
Beautiful. We'll put all of that in the show notes. And
perfect.
For the final trio, the first question, the first two are personalized to the guest, and then the last one we ask at the end of every show. So the first one is, when was the last time you took a leap of faith?
Few months ago, I would say. I feel like I'm always taking leaps of faith and just try. You know what? No, the last time I took a leap of faith was a couple days ago, because through this whole fire situation here that ignited something in me, it awakened me to my own health conversations and my experience with health. And I was like, you know what? I need to change some things around. I need to change these inner narratives, and I need to do something very, very differently. And it felt very scary to my body to want to change these things. But I'm like, no, I need to have faith. I need to have faith in the path God is taking me down. And so instead of doing all these different protocols for my body, I'm like, no, I'm going to take a leap of faith and do it this different way that I'm being called to do it. And so this is, of course, a journey to be continued. But I put away all the supplements. I was like, no, I'm not doing it this way. I'm going to trust my inner compass, and I'm going to take a leap of faith of what God is trying to teach me now.
What is that new way in terms of health for you?
Really realizing that our body knows how to heal itself. And we have so much wisdom and so much power and so much magic in healing our own bodies. And I truly feel that that is one of the things I'm meant to experience and learn in this lifetime, and to then also share it with other people. Because I've noticed there's so many things that go on with my gut health, and I've done protocol after protocol that hasn't worked. And I feel like I finally was like, oh God, you're trying to tell me something. There's a reason why these protocols aren't working. It's because I'm meant to learn this. And so it felt like a leap of faith to be like, okay, no more protocols. put all these things to the side, really dive into learning about the fourth dimension, where we go in there and heal the body. I am going to work heavily with Joe Dispenza this year and really go, I feel like he's like the godfather of all these things for us right now.
Daddy Joe.
Yes. And I'm so grateful God has brought really amazing like medical mediums into my life that are going to work with me and support me in these ways. And it's really a leap of faith, but I'm like, oh yeah, that is a leap of faith and I'm here for it. And I need to jump into this for me to even be activated to my next level. And I could then be a reflection of that truth and then share it with everyone else.
Yeah. It's so funny you brought up Joe. I'm headed to his next advanced follow-up literally next week. So I'll be on a flight just in a few days.
Oh, the one in Dallas?
In Cancun.
Oh, it's in Cancun. Okay, fun.
Yeah. And I was at the 10-day at the end of the year, and that was wild. That's a whole nother podcast. But I do agree, like once you understand that model of thinking and reality, you understand how fast the body can heal once you're in coherence, and once you're creating that, not making these matter to matter, the protocols or all these things, but changing the field and influencing matter. And yeah, he's one of my, biggest teachers, been on the show a few times. I love him so much.
Yeah.
Good that you brought him up. What is the greatest message that you have received from Spirit?
The greatest message from Spirit. I will say the greatest message I've received, and I will say it's from the Galactics, and it's to be playful in life. I think that was the greatest message, even though it sounds so simple. We can look at so many people and how they're not being playful in their lives. They think being responsible, awakened adults and being serious, that they have to be so serious. And the greatest message was, no, be playful. And it was the most simple, most beautiful, and most profound message to me.
Yeah, I need to hear that as well, because I'm a bit of a goofball off the show, but when I'm here, I'm like, I feel like I'm almost like in a trance when I'm doing an interview. and I, I've met people that have watched the show and they're like, like, it's not like you're a different person, but there's a side of you that's like more playful and like funny, and like you're making jokes all the time. And I'm like, yeah, I'll try to incorporate that, someday on the podcast. But
yeah, especially with the spiritual stuff, I think we all get so serious, and it's something that like I was too myself for a while, and very much like you, when you see me on the outside, not in my work mode, I'm such a goofball and I'm so silly and I'm so not serious about stuff. And one thing that I'm very called to is Alex, wait a second, like people need to realize that's a big part of life. So me and one of my really good friends are actually creating a podcast this year to kind of
let's go
be a reflection of that, because we are both spiritual women that do spiritual jobs and stuff like that. But we're like, let's humanize this so people understand that, like, how to incorporate these messages and this wisdom into your everyday life. And so that it's not that, oh, when you're spiritual, you're so serious, which is what we all used to think. But I think that's a part of the shift that's happening this year. That's a part of the shedding that's happening this year, and realizing that in even talking about these concepts, yeah, there's topics that we could be a little bit more serious about, but all in all, it's playful, it's joyful, it's lighthearted, and that's what the energy is really all about.
And spirituality only means that you're connected to spirit, but the fun is playing in the human personality game, and like, and everyone's so different too. It's we're here to be unique. We're here to be in our personality. We're here to, make ourselves laugh. So
yeah.
We'll end with the time capsule question, which we ask at the end of every show. And it requires us to travel a little bit out into the future, around 15 to 20 years. I chose out those time frames because I believe that's going to be a time in history when the young generations of today will be stepping into leadership positions around the world. And just like any great leader, they had great mentors, great teachings, great resources to help them be the best leader. So you were given the opportunity to leave behind a time capsule in 15 to 20 years down the line that the next generation of leaders will open. And when they open this time capsule, you will have left behind whatever you wanted them to have. It could be a frequency, a vibration, something physical. We've heard it all, anything that stretches your imagination, but knowing that what you put in there will allow these leaders to be best equipped to then lead the new earth and lead this new golden age that we're headed into. What would you leave behind in the time capsule?
I would literally leave behind my storyline, my story, because I think that a big part of my purpose on this earth has been to experience things and then share about it, experience and then share. And I'm starting to realize that's a big theme in my life and in my soul's contract. So I would literally leave behind my story and my experiences and the lessons that came from them so that they could understand the lineage that came before them and they can take away the wisdom from my experiences.
If there was one thread of your story that you would like to leave behind now, what would it be?
One thread of the story?
One chapter.
I think the best chapter has been the chapter where I finally decided to let myself be authentically me. And I think one of, if not the highest frequency, is to be authentically yourself. And so one of the greatest ways that we can help humanity is by encouraging others to truly be authentic to themselves, because when somebody is authentic to themselves, they are so in love with themselves. And when they are so in love with themselves, you don't have time for hate and separation. So the authentic chapter, that's a big key.
When did you make that decision?
I want to say 27 or so, where I finally realized, I was like, if I want to get better from being so sick, I really need to do things that ignite me. And I remember one of the things I always wanted was tattoos. And in my Middle Eastern culture, you're not allowed to get tattoos. It's just like such a big no-no. And I was like, no, I want tattoos. And although I already had some, they were on my side. So like you wear clothes and it gets covered. I said, no, that doesn't feel authentically me. And so right on my wrist and here, I got a little heart, and it's like something you can't hide it. It's there all the time. But this was I'm going to honor myself and be authentic to myself, because this is how I set myself free. And it was the best part of my journey, was choosing to always honor my authenticity.
And we know that love isn't the highest frequency, but authenticity is the highest frequency. So beautiful way to end, Sima. Thank you so much for making the space, being so authentic. It's been a joy and a blessing getting to know you. And I feel like we're going to continue this conversation down the line. Thank you for sharing your gifts, your story, and all that you have to offer to humanity. It's a pleasure and an honor. And I can't wait to do this again.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Of course.